Hello, everyone, and welcome into another X's and Dogs podcast. Today, we are gearing up for the Week 15, I believe it's Week 15, right? Week 15 game against the Chicago Bears. I've talked about this quite a few times over the past few weeks, ever since we saw Shedeur Sanders make his first start for the Cleveland Browns. And, one of the benefits, I guess, selfishly as a Browns fan, to having Shedeur making his, first appearance in the league and having the excitement of watching that for the Browns is that it's added some real entertainment to the end of a pretty disappointing season. I don't know if I would say disappointing, but not the most entertaining, not the most win-filled season for the Cleveland Browns. And definitely, I think all Browns fans can agree that Shedeur Sanders has, at the very least, given us a reason to be excited to watch the games every weekend, which is not something that Browns fans are able to do at this point in the season. Most of the time, at least in my life, the Browns have a similar record to what they have right now, but the difference is they have some quarterback playing that really gives the team no hope whatsoever, and they're actively just trying to lose football games to get a better draft pick, which so many times they end up trading anyway to accumulate more draft picks and do nothing with them. It's kind of the story of my life as a Browns fan up to this point. There's been some deviations from that, but that's a very, very common theme. And I just think that this season, Shedeur has given the Browns fans at least hope and at least a good reason to sit down for a few hours on the weekend and spend your time watching a football team that probably won't win. And that's a positive. That's a positive in a very negative Browns season so far. So I wanted to start with that because it really is, it's obvious. Everyone's talking about Shedeur, all Browns fans, all Browns media, social media, radio. 80 to 90% of what they're talking about is Shedeur Sanders. So without him, this season would be very, I guess, in a season that is already dark, would be much darker. And Shedeur has a great opportunity to go out there and play this Sunday. And I made a tweet about it the other day. He has a chance to do something pretty funny, which is go out there and outperform yet another number one overall pick in the NFL in Caleb Williams. We know that last week Shedeur faced off against the Titans. Cam Ward, previous number one overall pick. And I think it's safe to say that it's not apples to apples, but it's safe to say that Shedeur looked better than Cam Ward in that game. I think if you're coming at it from a purely unbiased standpoint, you would have to agree with that statement. And again, Shedeur has quite the opportunity and yet another NFL game to outperform a number one overall pick this weekend. And today we're going to talk about his chances to do that, the Browns' chances to win this football game, and kind of what needs to take place for that to happen, and a little bit more into that Bears game all around. So we'll get into that later in the video, but I wanted to start today's podcast by going over some just, basic updates, kind of league-wide, Browns specific, a little bit of both. So first off, some scary news out of Pittsburgh came out. Fellow AFC North team, TJ Watt had a little bit of like a lung scare, it seems, and so obviously best wishes go out to him. Hopefully he can get healthy. Hopefully he can play in that Miami game. I believe it's on Monday night for them. Never rooting for any sort of health issues for anybody. You know, it's just a sport we play, or we don't play. It's just a sport they play, and never rooting for anything like that to happen. So hopefully he can get better and get out there and play with the Steelers this weekend. So that said, there's definitely also some Browns kind of news going on over the past couple days. Not a ton, but some small things. First off, there's a pretty huge list of potential injury, just smaller injuries that have guys on the injury report that came out yesterday. I haven't seen the one for the Thursday practice yet, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of guys that also missed Thursday because there was quite the hefty list on Wednesday. And Kevin did say there's no guarantees for any of these guys to miss the game, but I'm sure at least some of them will miss the game on Sunday. We're kind of just entering that time of the season where you're on a 3-10 football team and it's just not the most motivating culture there to go out there and practice through injuries. Will they play in a game? That's a different story, but these guys who are dealing with nicks and bruises and things like that, they're definitely less likely to go out there and practice, I think, at this point in the year. But, a large injury report, we'll see who's available for Sunday's game. I don't think it really matters all too much, apart from maybe, I think it would be helpful if Jack Conklin could play. Obviously we want to see Denzel play, but I don't want him to rush back from that injury like I talked about. And there's just some other guys that, we'll see if they play on Sunday. But other than that, the Browns brought in Mo Hurst. I can't remember. See, now I'm trying to remember if Mo Hurst was even on the team last year. I know he was on the team in 2023 when we went to the playoffs, and he was actually quite good that season. They got him for really cheap because he had some injury issues out in San Francisco, just couldn't stay healthy. And then I believe he got hurt again last year. I don't know. My memory's kind of letting me down on this one, but let me know in the comments. Was he on the team last year? I can't remember. But we brought him back regardless. He played with Jim Schwartz in 2023 at the very least. So he's definitely, at the minimum, has some comfort level with the defensive scheme that we play here in Cleveland. And that's a defensive line that has had some injuries all around it, particularly in that defensive tackle position recently, led by that Malik Collins injury, and Shelby Harris kind of got banged up a couple times over the past couple weeks. So, I think that's a good pickup, just a guy who has familiarity with the team and the system there, and Jim Schwartz. And I'm sure he'll probably play on Sunday if he's able to physically get up to speed by then. So, not a crazy, huge announcement there, but it'll be interesting to see how he can kind of get into the feel of things and potentially help the defense on Sunday. But yeah, that's kind of all the news. Well, I did want to actually touch on Luke Whippler. I think I talked about it a little bit after the game against the Titans, but Luke Whippler from now till the end of the season, so 4 games, has what really turns out to be kind of a tryout, but I don't like to consider it a tryout because I think, assuming Luke Whippler is not horrible, the Browns are going to move forward with him as the center next year, and that's because he's going to be the only guy we have under contract there. They invested a draft pick in him, and really they don't have any other option. I think there's going to be more pressing positions, particularly on that offensive line, to go out there and spend free agency dollars on or draft picks on. So the Browns are really going to rely on Luke Whippler to be a potential answer into next season, seasons after. So it's going to be an important 4 games for him, and super crucial for his career to go out there and look, at least average in these games. Like, there's not any crazy expectations, just can't make any big errors. And notably, we saw the fumbled snap to Shedeur on that first 2-point conversion last week. So, I mean, who knows? It's hard to say if that was his fault or Shedeur's fault, but just kind of some unfamiliarity there between those two players. And, hopefully this week in practice, they are able to get on the same page a little bit more, and I expect them to be better with the operational stuff going into the Chicago game this weekend. So that kind of wraps up the news, the things going on in Berea. And I wanted to talk next about the general manager position for the Browns. Specifically looking forward into that position. And it's got to start with Andrew Berry. There was a very interesting point brought up on the NFL Stock Exchange. Those guys do a great job with kind of draft, college player recruiting, not recruiting, but evaluating. They do a really in-depth, great job kind of talking about draft coverage overall. So highly recommend them if you're looking into, and you want to get a better idea of some NFL draft stuff. But anyway, on their podcast that came out, I believe today, they talked about how, and brought up a good point in that Andrew Berry, in order for the Browns to move off of Andrew Berry and bring in a new general manager, it would require that new general manager to have a very, very similar philosophy where, you're constantly restructuring contracts, kicking the can down the road with some of this cap hit stuff, and kind of, focusing on that very, progressive cap type structuring that is complex. And Andrew Berry is one of the leading brains in that field. So it was a good point by them. They brought up the fact that the Browns are already in a position where they have multiple contracts for guys who won't even really be playing for them next season, and that will have an impact on their cap sheet. So knowing that, if they did get rid of Andrew Berry, they would kind of have to pay the Riddler for some of those things immediately, and it would really have some very negative cap implications. And that's assuming the new GM wasn't able to pick up right where Andrew Berry left off in that regard, which would definitely limit the kind of the pool from guys you're looking for in that GM position. It's definitely more common now to have GMs that are more progressive with the cap, similar to Andrew Berry. But it still is definitely hard to find a guy who relies on it as much as Andrew Berry does. So I wanted to kind of build on that idea. And I'm someone who is probably about 80% sure at this point that Andrew Berry's not going to go anywhere. I think that the Haslams are very fond of Andrew Berry, very fond of the job he's done here. That can be up for debate. The way I look at Andrew Berry is I think he's done an average to good job in free agency, like re-signing players, keeping guys' contracts, being progressive with guys' contracts, keeping them in positive cap situations. That doesn't take into consideration Deshaun, because that contract was just so big, you can't really do too much with it to work around it. But I think Andrew's tried his hardest after realizing that it was going to just be a bad situation with Deshaun. And also, I think that he's done a good job kind of getting some free agents in here to make impacts. Malik Collins was fantastic this year. He brought in Amari Cooper. Dalvin Tomlinson was good when we had him. So there's, and I'm definitely forgetting some, but there's been a number of free agents that have been brought in here that have made impacts. There's definitely been some that left things to be desired as well. But I think when it comes to free agency, it's not as easy as it seems to get impact guys because you're dealing with players who other teams are not re-signing. So, yeah, I think he's done average to good in that part of it. When it comes to the draft, I would say he's been below average. And before this past draft, I would say he was bad. But I think he's went from bad to below average, so he's kind of taken that step up. And knowing that he just had this fantastic last draft, along with the fact that you're going to have to find a new general manager who has very similar ideas to Andrew Berry and ideologies on the cap situation. Knowing those two things put together, I just find it very unlikely that the Haslams would decide to move on from Andrew Berry. And I have a little bit of a hypothesis for this offseason and what the general manager position could look like. There's been some rumors floated out there that Andrew Berry could be in the running to get a promotion up to more of an operational, definitely still having, a fingerprint on the general manager roles, but more of that Paul DePodesta type role, whatever the name of that could be. I think the Haslams Jimmy will probably just make that up and give it to Andrew Berry, but he's going to be probably more of Jimmy's right-hand guy that Paul DePodesta was. According to this hypothesis and some of these rumors that I've heard over the past few weeks and past month, and additionally with that, this is something that I believe could happen. I haven't heard any rumors about this. It's just, this is something that I think could really be realistic. I think a promotion to the assistant general manager, Glenn Cook, who's been here for a number of years and worked under Andrew Berry, who I'm sure has very similar ideologies to Andrew Berry, kind of coming out of that Andrew Berry tree, if you will, bringing him on as the next general manager, giving him that promotion. So him and Andrew Berry will still pretty much be working hand in hand, but I think Glenn Cook then would get a pretty significant step up in his role in drafting free agents, roster building, etc. Glenn Cook's a guy who this past offseason, I think a lot of us thought he was going to have a really good chance to get a different general manager spot. I believe he did interview with the Commanders, if I'm not wrong, and maybe another team as well. But he definitely had some looks to potentially being a general manager for a team. And if he doesn't become the general manager for the Browns, I think he's going to be extremely likely to go somewhere else in the next couple of years, especially after this most recent draft that we've just had, and he's super highly regarded around the NFL. So, the Andrew Berry promotion into more operational, Glenn Cook additional promotion to that general manager spot. I think that's something that could be pretty likely for this team. It makes sense to me. That's my hypothesis. What will be probably like 4 months out from whenever that decision is actually made. But we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. I think it's still too early to say for sure with both Andrew and Kevin. I'm more sure that Kevin will be gone definitely than Andrew Berry. So let me know what you guys think about that situation. Like, is that something you think could happen? Or does that sound crazy? Now Now I want to shift into talking about the Bears game this weekend. And there was some reports kind of about the weather coming out for this one. The Browns have had some really brutal weather games this year. Looking back on it, it's not every year that we have weather games like this, although it seems like it. This year has been particularly bad, though. The Miami game was pretty brutal weather. Let's see, like the Jets game in New York wasn't great. What else? Obviously, what was the most recent one? The 49ers, the Titans wasn't. So, I mean, this is 4 or 5 games now that we've had just pretty brutal weather. And looking at it from the Browns' viewpoint currently, I think it's just a great example as to why this team is going to get a dome. I know this one's out in Chicago, but still, this team does not do great in bad weather games. It's not like we have this random advantage. I don't buy into that idea. So, side note, that's why we're going to get a dome, and that's why Browns fans should be excited about it, because we just don't have to worry about these weather games as much. That seem to be just more and more common as the years go on for some reason, although I'm sure that's not actually the case. Anyway, yeah, the weather is going to be like 11 degrees. Real feel says 1 degree. I've seen that with like wind chill actually go down to be like deep into the negatives, so like -10, -5 to -10 degrees. So that's brutal. Obviously, there won't be many Browns fans there, but for the players, it's going to be a tough one. You're on a 3-10 team going into Chicago to play in a windy environment and some brutally cold weather. It's going to be pretty tough. And Shedeur now is having to deal with yet another game in bad weather. So that'll be literally 3 of the 4 games. The Titans game really wasn't that bad, but it was wet for sure. So 3 of 4 games that some definite weather inclinations going on. So he should be used to it by now, but unfortunate for him and his ability to kind of show what he can do in the pass game. But still gonna have to do it, man. It won't be a good enough excuse that there's bad weather if he plays like a really bad game this weekend. So he needs to figure out how he can still be effective in some really cold, potentially really windy environment. And I would say the cold weather doesn't really give much of a benefit to either team. I think both teams want to run the football. The Bears are an excellent rushing team. They have the second most rush yards per game in the NFL. And with DeAndre Swift and Monangai, they're really effective. So, like, the Bears are going to be fine with bad weather. They're going to just run the ball. And the thing is, the Browns defense in the season as a whole has been really good at stopping the run. I believe we're top 3 in run defense. So you would think, okay, yeah, like that'll play into the Browns' favor, the team that wants to run the football. But actually, I think after watching the way the team played last week without Malik Collins and some of the banged up defensive linemen, like Mason Graham has a rib injury, which I'm sure is tough in the run game to get it to, be physical and run stuff. Like that's just got to be tough with a rib injury. So I think just the Browns' run defense is not as good currently as it had been earlier in the year, and that's a little scary against a team like this, who is very effective at running the football. And so I think that probably leans into the Bears' edge a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how the Browns can kind of bounce back from that bad run defending performance against the Titans. I'm sure Jim Schwartz wants to be a lot better than that, and he probably expects a lot better than that from his defense. So I think he definitely has the capability to go out there and have this team playing a lot better, especially if Mo Hurst is able to suit up on Sunday for this team and, add another guy into that defensive tackle room. But anyway, yeah, so the Bears are going to try to just run the football. If the Browns can stop it, I think they have a decent chance to keep this one competitive. If the Bears are able to run it as effectively as the Titans, they're going to beat us by probably 20 points. I mean, it's a good Bears team. They're 10-3 or how many games have we played? Yeah, I think they're 10-3. Or maybe 9-4. Yeah, actually, I think 9-4. So yeah, I mean, it's a good football team over there. They're looking to make the playoffs. They're going to be really competitive. It's kind of a must-win game for them. They cannot afford to lose this one because they still are in the race for that NFC North division. And yeah, like I said, they're going to try to probably come out, run the football. And if we can stop them, we give ourselves a chance. I guess offensively for the Browns, the thing with this Bears defense is they're first in turnovers. So I always say that turnovers have a large percentage to do with just luck and fortune. So whenever you look at the Bears defense, they force a ton of turnovers, but they rank towards the bottom of the league in yards per game, points per game. So it's a defense who you can score on and you can have sustained drives on, but the thing that they will do is turn the ball over on you. So if you are turning it over, you're going to have a hard time in this one. If you're making like reckless throws, just not safe with the football, you're going to probably struggle against this Bears defense. So that's key for a rookie quarterback to be just safe with the ball. Like Shedeur can't be out there throwing it into some dangerous areas, or else I'm sure they'll force some turnovers on us in this one. And if the Browns offense is able to avoid those killer turnovers that we saw in the Titans game, along with their ability to potentially play some good defense in the run game, I think we have a real chance in this one. Those are the two keys to success for me, like stopping their run game and not turning the ball over. If we're able to keep them under, I'd say like 100 yards on the ground and maybe limit the turnovers to 1, even better 0, I think we have a real chance. And I think it will, if it does play out that way, I would probably pick the Browns to win this one. For my prediction in this one, I'm going to, I'm not going to pick us to go on the road into Chicago and beat this Bears team who is, likely going to make the playoffs. But I think we'll keep it close. Score prediction, I'll say 24-21 Chicago Bears take this one. Like I said in the beginning of the video, the results of these games to me, from a Browns standpoint, really don't matter. I just want to see how Shedeur is able to build week to week. More tapes out on him. He just played a game where he threw the ball a ton, so there's a lot of tape for the Bears defense to kind of scheme a game plan up against him. How is he able to respond to that? Will be super interesting to see. Hopefully he's able to be smart at the line of scrimmage, know what type of looks he's seeing, avoid those interceptions. That's the big thing for him in this one. That's what I'm watching for. Avoid the interceptions, be efficient. Obviously, don't take big sacks. And to me, that's the most important thing in this game. Obviously, want to see Myles Garrett get a few more sacks. It's getting kind of dicey. I don't want to say it's getting dicey, but he needs... he's at 20 now, so he needs like 4 more, I think. So that's 1 per game, which like he's probably going to do, but it gets a little scary. Like, let's say, God forbid, he twists an ankle or something. Now we're looking at a pretty scary situation with that. And so hopefully he's able to just go out there and get 2 or 3 sacks on Sunday and just, break the record the week after. Let's just not even worry about it in the last few games. I think it would be awesome if he's able to break that record against the Steelers at home. And I think there's a good chance that'll be what happens. We'll see, though. But I think it should be a close game this weekend. The Bears are a team that has won a ton of close games this year. One of those, it seems like every year there's a team that wins a lot of close games and gets a lot of turnovers, and that's the Bears this year. So, whenever you're playing against those teams, you're always going to have a chance to steal a game from them if you just play clean football, and that's something the Browns never do. But if they are able to do it, I think they have a chance. Let me know how you guys think this one's going to play out in the comments down below. As always, got to see some growth from the quarterback. Hoping to see some growth. And to be honest, the result doesn't matter all that much. Hopefully, we're all able to just enjoy the game. Hopefully it's close. And hopefully it's a fun game to watch. But anyways, thank you guys for watching today's podcast. I will have a post game out, probably about 6 p.m. after the Browns game on Sunday. So tune in to that one and enjoy your weekend up to that point. Getting real close to the holidays, so hopefully everyone's excited for that. And yeah, that's all I got for today. See you all in the next podcast. Bye-bye.